We are glad that you are attending our first jump of the 14-15 school year. And we have got several of the managers on tonight. Tiffany Phoenix up in Maryland is on with us, and Christine Dukes in South Carolina is with us. Debbie Lozo, who is one of our, she's our professional learning specialist. She is also on this evening. She will be teaching several of our jumps throughout the school year. And then we have Lydia Hutto, who is new to Cobb, and she will be our new tech person, our IT person. She's a speech therapist, but has some IT background from family and others. And so she's working to help us organize all of our programs. So she'll help you and me as we go through the school year as well. So that's who's on the line. And I wanted to go over just a few housekeeping things before we get started with the actual seminar. If you will mute yourself on your end, and it looks like most of you have, that helps for barking dogs or slamming doors. And however, at the end, when we open it to questions and answers, we're more than willing to unmute folks and for you guys to talk and ask questions during the webinar. We encourage that, that communication back and forth. If you have a question during the seminar, there's a questions box in your control panel from GoToWebinar. It's at the bottom, and you can simply type in a question. The managers will be monitoring that during the jump if you've got an issue with sound, or if you just even simply have a question about something that's being talked about in the jump PowerPoint, and we'll be glad to answer those as well. I think that is everything. Before we get started, I really just wanted to know who is on the line. So we are going to have a poll. Can y'all see the poll now?
Yes.
Okay, great. So if you will pick which one of these best describes your experience right now working in the schools, that'll help us know how to talk and where to guide everybody this evening. I'm going to wait just a few minutes for everyone to jump in. And I know that some of you have already started schools, and some of our schools up in Maryland and other places haven't started or are just now starting. Some of you have been in since the end of July. So it looks like, I'm going to close the poll, and it looks like we've got, okay, 56% of y'all are working first year or CS. That's awesome. 13% of you guys are some experience but new to schools, and then a third of you are veteran school-based therapists. So we are so glad to have all of y'all on board this evening. One of the things we did want to convey also about Advance or Jump, those are becoming interchangeable. Advance is our software where we store the recorded sessions and our tests. Jump is our program, of course, that they're walking through this year. One of the things that we wanted to continue to convey is that this program really is designed for first years and new to schools. So it may feel a little beginner or just getting started level for some of you, but we can all benefit from it. For all the veterans, there are CEUs for MASHA for this, and there will be throughout the school year. As we get towards the middle of the school year, we've got some discipline-specific webinars that will apply, and some of those may be more intermediate. So let's get started. All right, so the learning objectives for this evening, therapists will be able to define his or her roles and responsibilities during the first weeks of the school year. Therapists will be able to choose the best individual organizational style for caseload management from a selection of data collection samples. And therapists will be able to define the components of how to perform file reviews for each student on a caseload. So the things that we'll look over tonight, this is just sort of a brief overview of our agenda, getting started and talking about these first days, scheduling and how to schedule your kiddos into your work day and work week, caseload management, data collection, and then we've got some ideas about how just tidbits and hints, jump into action things. So at the beginning of the school year, what do you need to find? These are things that you need. You're going to find your room, of course. You want a map of your school. This is particularly helpful, especially if you're at a new school, to be able to know which classrooms to go get your students. If Bobby is in Mrs. Smith's class, then you need to know where Ms. Smith's class is. So get a map of your school. That will help greatly at the beginning of the school year. If you can, get a master list of students by grade and teachers from your front office. This will help you also in scheduling and knowing which classrooms will be in PE at what times and which classrooms will be at lunch at what times. And that way you don't have to go back and forth and ask individual teachers. You will have that master list in front of you, and it will help in developing that schedule. And then again, the master schedules of PE, lunch, the specials, and usually those are by grade. And then you want to find your SLP or OT or PT files. You need to know where those are. So who will help me? Who's going to help me this school year? If I need help, who am I going to go to? The great thing about working for Cobb is there is lots of clinical support in addition to the school year, the school district personnel that you have access to. So you've got your clinical manager. We've got Christine and Joni and Lisa. We also have Tiffany, and we will be hiring a couple of other clinical managers coming on board in the next month or so as well. You've got clinical support from Celeste Alexander and Debbie Lozo as well. You have a lead therapist. If you are in a district that has 2 or more Cobb therapists in that district, we've assigned a team lead to simply help guide and just keep communication open, help encourage folks. They're going to schedule things like a quarterly dinner or lunch where everybody from Cobb can get together. So that lead therapist will be somebody that is in that, has been in that district before, typically, and they will have great information about, who to call if your computer breaks down, or who to call if you need which form, what number form do I need to fill out for this particular part of the IEP. They'll be able to help you with that information. And then you also have the lead therapist from the school system. You've got the Cobb main office for any administrative issues that you have with Cobb in general, whether it's payroll or some other type of form. If you're buying a home and you need a proof of employment, the Cobb office can help you with that. Then you also have the special coordinator with your district, other SLPs, OTs, and PTs in your school and or your district, and then your team leader or special ed within your school. Each school should have a special ed team leader designated, and that person should be a great resource to you as well. So if you don't know who some of these people are yet in your schools, or in your districts, find out, because that'll be real important. You want to find out who those people are and get their phone numbers and their emails and make sure that they're readily available, so that when you come across an obstacle or need help, you don't have to spend time going and digging for phone numbers and emails. That'll be readily available to you. Write them inside maybe your caseload notebook or wherever you keep important information, so it'll be readily accessible. So during the first days of school, here are some things that you can think about doing. You will want to look through your materials. What materials do you have? Go ahead and take an inventory of what's at your school, what's available to you, and I would quite literally, if there's not a list, take an inventory and make a list of those things so that you know what needs to be put back at that school at the end of the year. Sometimes we may take materials home to get ready for planning, or we may even take them to another school to work with a child, and that way you know where which items belong in which space. And then, do you need to order any items? Is there any money? Sometimes there's money, sometimes there's not, but find out if there's any monies available for you for buying materials for your therapy room. Of course, those would belong to the school district, but sometimes PTA allots money to teachers and they'll include the speech therapist in that. Sometimes the principals may have a little pot of money where they can dole out, or even the special ed director. So just kind of ask around if there's money for materials that if you need them specifically. Make sure your name is on all of your own supplies, and that way you will know how to sort those at the end of the year, and they won't walk off to another school or get put in a closet somewhere where you won't be able to find it. So make sure your name's on all of your own personal materials. And then think about what you're going to tell parents at the beginning of the year. Are you going to send a letter home? Are you going to send email home? What would you like to tell them about yourself? Which contact numbers do you want to give them? Your email. You can, when you would like to meet, when you're open to meeting with parents if they need you, things like that. So go ahead and think through those sorts of things for the beginning of the school year. Okay, so I think I'm going to let Debbie talk about the file review and where to find some files. So Debbie, I'm going to hand that over to you now.
Okay, thanks. It's important to know where to find the special education files. And as speech language pathologists, you know we fit under that special education services umbrella. And there are several different ways of looking at it, and so you've got to find out how your school district is handling it and your individual school. Usually there is a school special education file which would hold all the major documents for all services. And again, this might vary, but for example, I worked in a high school where they were all located in a special education office, and every time I needed to go back and look at a history of a student or whatever, I would go to that office and pull out the file drawer and find my student, and I could review their history. Or pretty much most of their history. You probably are aware that many things are being saved electronically. So, but that usually only goes back so far. So, for example, if you are in a middle school or high school, some of the documents may not yet be electronic. So you might actually want to look at that file. Some schools require that SLPs put some of their most important things in there. For example, they may need to store their test protocols. Other districts or schools may say, no, you can keep the test protocols in your working file, in your office. We just want a copy of your eligibility report, evaluation report, those kinds of things. So again, it varies from school to school, and usually most schools have a special education meeting, and they talk about those things with their new teachers, and would include the SLP, hopefully. In the working file, that is where you keep pertinent records that are important about the services to each student. So you might put your data collection there eventually. Like, we're going to talk a little bit about having a caseload management notebook, and at some point you may take the data collection sheets where you were recording progress and stick them into your working file. But again, that might be more towards the end of the school year. Anecdotal records. You went and observed someone, you wrote down some information about that student's functioning, it related to their goals and objectives, or an assessment you're doing, you're going to want to put it in your working file. Keep a copy of it. Parents write you emails or send you notes. You want to keep a copy of those too. So you kind of have to think through it, but anything that might be important later on, you want to save now. Later at the end of the school year, you can purge some of these documents according to your school district. But for now, you probably want to keep a hold on them, especially because you're still learning about each of your students. And like I said, there will be school district policy to help you understand that, or know what you need to need to keep. And some are considered teacher records and do not need to be turned in anywhere and can be, like I said, purged at the end of the year. I was involved in some legal issues at times that involved lawyers and parents not happy with the school district, and some of these communications were, we were told, did not need to be kept. So again, you're going to get guidance on that. There usually is a central office file which includes all the pertinent original documents, especially those that have signatures. But for example, the large school district I came from, they were in the process of scanning all of those documents into an electronic file that they would keep. So again, that's going to depend on what happens. Sometimes the central office special education department will say, send these originals to central office where they will be scanned. And then later you can look them up on the database. So, you know, it's going to depend on where your school district is and in that type of thing. So I've kind of talked through the online documents. Just about every school district has an online IEP system, and they almost always train, I haven't heard of anyone who hasn't, provide training to new special education staff, which would include SLPs, and how to use that online IEP system. So hopefully many of you have already been through that training, or if not, you'll probably get to school and find out that there's a training coming up. So they're very good usually about training you on the system that you need to use. Okay.
Thank you. And that's true. If you haven't heard about those particular trainings, ask and find out to make sure that that information hasn't fallen through the cracks somewhere, so you are included in those online, or the trainings for online documents and Medicaid billing if they're doing training on that as well. Okay, so getting familiar, those were what to expect, where you find them and what they are. So what do we need to do with them as file reviews? We need to get familiar with our student caseload, and we can't treat them if we don't know them and if we don't know what they need. So read through their files, obtain all the information, just the basic information that you may need, and you can decide what you need in your classroom or in your working file. Name, address, date of birth. You might even want to include which teacher they have. So wherever you're going to keep this student's information, keep that as part of the file review. These are all kinds of different documents that Debbie was just talking about that you might find in your files. Anything from teacher notes, progress reports, report cards, achievement tests, discipline reports, evaluations and reports done by the school district, reports from medical doctors, IEPs or behavior plans, admission, review, and dismissal meeting reports, and that's primarily in Texas. That's a Texas term. A graduation plan, a summary of importance. You won't find all of these things in files, but you should be able to find most of these things that can help you determine that student's level of performance. How much progress they've made and where they need to go. So again, read through your IEPs. Make note of important dates, and we're going to talk a lot about this in 2 weeks. We're going to do time management and behavior management. I really encourage everybody to attend those two. There is no magic bullet for time management, but there's a lot of common sense things that we just don't pay attention to, and I think that it'll benefit everybody. So make note of important dates, put those on your calendar, put them in your iPad or your e-calendar, your Outlook, whatever it is that you use for dates, so that those are popping up and you know when they're coming. Know your students, their background, therapy history, goals and objectives. You will probably have to look at that file many times in the first month or two as they come into your class. It's difficult if you've got 50 kids on the class and on your caseload to know all of these things and remember them all. But nobody expects you to do that. But you do have to at least be familiar to be able to plan for those therapy sessions. And and read minutes for placement instructions. You want to make sure that you are scheduling your children on your caseload for the amount of time that is required in that IEP, because remember, that's a legal document. And if it says 3 times a week, or if it says an hour and a half a week and you've only been serving them for an hour, we're going to have to go back and do compensatory services with that child. So it's very, very important that you pay attention to the placement instructions in the current IEP, what delivery model it is. Do they want to push in model where you're going to the classroom? Does it need to be individual? Whatever the special instructions are. So be familiar with those and make sure you plan accordingly. Here are some dates to know. Your orientations that may be taking place, and it might just not be one, there might be several in the first month, so make sure you know about all of those. District-wide trainings, any IEP training, Medicaid training, if there's a discipline-specific meeting, if you've got a speech meeting or an OTPT meeting, make sure you know about those and put them on your calendar, so that you can work those into your schedule and make your school aware of when you may be leaving the building to go attend trainings or meetings. Okay, so this is a note that Debbie found this summer, actually, as we were working on an IDEA webinar, and I'm going to let her go through this again. And you will get this information once we finish this evening. This will all be available on our advanced our advanced software, and we're going to talk about how to sign on to that and access all of that at the end. But so Debbie, will you go over the navigating the IEP process?
Sure, and this is a quick generic overview, and of course there may be a few little differences school district by school district, but mostly these procedures are mandated by IDEA, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, and that is the law. The last one was reauthorized in 2004, and that is the law that we all kind of have to follow, and all school districts develop their special education procedures from there. So in most cases we have a pre-referral stage where a student is maybe struggling in the general education classroom, is not in any special program, or has not been identified as having a disability. And the teachers, there's a procedure or process, and often it's called response to intervention, which is where that RTI in parentheses is. However, it could be called something else in your district too, but just think of it, so sorry about that phone, just think of it as something that happens before a student is identified as having a disability. And the idea is that that student needs to have some interventions in the classroom before someone jumps and says, oh, you've got a problem, you have a disability. After having some interventions in the classroom, then a referral may be made, and that for an evaluation for special services. And that could, speech and language is included in that, and there's a process for that. They are required to obtain consent. Usually a letter is sent to the parents, although oftentimes it may occur at a meeting. Now, nowadays we involve the parents in the pre-referral process, and so often they're there when a group of folks get together and decide that they need to recommend an evaluation for special services. And in that case, the letter may be just handed to the parent. But somewhere within 15 days, the school district needs to obtain informed consent. So parents are asked to sign a form saying that they consent to an evaluation, and that kind of leads the whole trail. And there's always at each step of the way, parents must provide consent so that they are always involved and know what's happening with their student, which makes a lot of sense. Then an evaluation can be completed once consent is obtained, and the school district has 60 days to complete that evaluation. Now, in speech and language, we can do that in a couple weeks, oftentimes. But if we have a student with multiple suspected disabilities, we may be looking at a psychological and other special education staff an OT, PT, whomever, and evaluating that student. So the 60 days is there to say, all of you must get together and do this evaluation. And then once the student is evaluated, eligibility needs to be determined. And some school districts have a meeting by the end of the 60 days to determine eligibility, and then they have another meeting within 30 days to hold an IEP meeting. They're the individual educational program. Some other school districts will have them all together. So they evaluate them, they feel like they're eligible, they have a meeting with the parent and say, oh yes, we all agree this student meets eligibility criteria, let's develop an IEP. So again, the 30 days is probably a safeguard for special situations. Most of the time it happens all at once. And then they must implement the plan. And you know, once everything's signed off and everyone agrees, that plan must be implemented as soon as possible. Almost all IEPs have a start date. So by that start date, the services must be in place. They must be receiving speech therapy, whatever. And then every year at the end, a year from the date that that IEP was developed, then they must hold an annual review meeting where they go over progress, develop new goals, et cetera, et cetera. The major thing about this, we do, Cobb Pediatrics does have a course on IDEA procedures. So if you're not very familiar with it, you may want to look into that. Amy, I'm not sure where we are with posting that course, so you might want to fill them in on that.
I will. We are actually working on that. That should be up in the next week to have the IDEA course on there if you're interested in taking that. It is a 2-hour course, so you can take it as the great thing about having these recorded courses is you can take it and stop and then finish a little more and take it. You don't have to take it in the full 2 hours all in one sitting. And that is free. That course is free to all of our Cobb Pediatric therapists. And we will let you know when that IDEA course has actually been loaded, and you will have access to that as well. Okay, I feel like I was going to say one more thing about talking about planning, again, time management with these 60 days and 30 days and our deadlines, that really falls in the category of under our time management and plays a big role in the schools of how we manage our time. And we're going to talk more about that again in 2 weeks. But you don't want to wait until the 50th day to write, your 10, if you've got 10 that have built up, those 10 evaluations. You have to be looking ahead and planning for those as you work through the school year. Okay, so we're going to keep moving on. Again, know your dates. Put future known meetings on your calendar. And then other than just meetings and trainings, know when your progress reports are due. Sometimes that'll sneak up on us if we don't have it on our calendar. All of a sudden we'll be talking to a teacher and realize, oh my gosh, progress reports are due next week, and then now you've got to do 50 progress reports in a few days. So know when your progress reports are due, know when all of your annual reviews are due. I would literally take your calendar and put each child's initials on your calendar of when their annual review is, so that you can, when you start looking ahead for a few weeks or months, or looking ahead to the next month, you know how many you've got ahead of you. It used to be that all school districts waited till the end of the school year to do everybody's, regardless of when they were evaluated. Some may still do that, but most will do annual reviews throughout the middle of the school year now, depending on when their initial evaluation was. So if they were initially evaluated in October to begin with, then their annual review would occur in October as well, or possibly their three-year reevaluation. So just find that out about how your district works, and then put them all on your calendar. So what should you do during your first week? And some of you may have completed your first week already, and we're sorry if you have. But definitely make contact with each of your students. You may want to go sit in the classroom with them and have a little group in the corner and just meet them, tell them your name, ask them if they even know why they're in speech. What do you learn in speech? What are you practicing in speech? What do you want to tell yourself? I mean, children, about yourself. How much of yourself do you want to share with them? I've got 2 dogs, or this is what I love to do. I love to go skiing, or things like that. So just kind of decide what you want to tell your children about yourself, and then set expectations for behavior as well, so that you've got your behavior chart set up. You've got your 3 to 4 rules posted in your room so that the kids can see them whenever they come in. That will be the second half of our jump 2. So in 2 weeks we'll talk about time management, and then we'll also talk about behavior management, and give you ideas for both of those topics.
Just a quick thought. After I retired from my school district, I filled in a number of schools just to get back into therapy. And one of the things I found really useful was developing a quick little interview sheet, even if they're as young as kindergarten, but just something that asks them about themselves, their family, what do they like or dislike, or what are your favorite classes, or do you have pets? What's your favorite thing to do when you're outside of school? And then we actually filled them out. I was working with another therapist picking up a school, and we found that that was helpful throughout the year, because all of a sudden we had this, we put it in a little folder. We kept a little therapy folder, and we put it in there just so that we would keep in mind what was really helpful about knowing that student. And I think they enjoyed it because they got to talk about themselves and what they liked and disliked. And if you have 50 kids on your caseload, it's not always easy to remember all of those. And I actually found it was really helpful with middle school and high school too. And with older kids, you can have them write it down and then talk about it. So just a thought for that first or second therapy session you have with the kids.
I love that. That's a great idea. And then, the first few weeks may be really a rough draft, and we all know that scheduling is a work in progress for a few weeks. During that second week of school, serve all of your students following a rough draft of a schedule. And we'll talk in a minute about how to get that rough draft of a schedule. By the third week, you should be following a fairly finalized schedule that you can send to your lead special ed teacher in your building, or your lead therapist in your district. And we always, of course, have to remain flexible, because as we add children, groups may grow, or we might need to move a child to another one. And during those first couple of weeks, even schools are changing their schedules sometimes. They're saying, oh, now we need to put this class at lunch at this time, and that, they're just still kind of juggling at what's going to look best and work best in the schools with all those kids. So the name of the game in those first few weeks is just remaining flexible. So when we schedule, here are some different ways to schedule. You can group by grades, or you can group by disabilities. You can use the master schedule that you've obtained from the office to identify problem times, and by problem times I mean the ones that are off limits. You need to find out which subjects your district considers off limits for pulling children out of. They may not let you pull them out of PE, but they might let you pull them out of English, or vice versa, or there's just sometimes that they won't let us pull them. And I know a lot of therapists that have started doing this, and I really, really like this idea, and this might complicate things in your scheduling, but they try to pull kids at 2 different times in the week. So they might pull them on a morning on a Tuesday, but an afternoon on a Thursday, and that just helps them not miss the same time of their class routine, weekly routine every week. They're not missing the same stuff. When you're going to teachers to help finalize schedules and make sure those work with them, the best advice we can give is don't say, well, when would you like for Billy to come to speech? Because most people are either going to say at 8 o'clock or at 2 o'clock. So you look at your schedule and maybe give them 2 or 3 times and say, hey, of these 2 or 3 times, which time would work best for you? I know some therapists have even put little sheets of paper and said, I've got, these kids, I've got 3 kids in your classroom. Name 3 times that would be the best for them to come, and list them in order of your preference, 1, 2, 3. However you want to do that. Send copies of your speech schedule to your teachers, the teachers that will be affected by your schedules, not every teacher, but with your children's initials highlighted. You don't need to put everybody's names on there, but the initials highlighted. And during those first few weeks of school too, figure out which ones of your students can make their way to your classroom by themselves, and which ones you will need to go pick up. Some of those smaller ones may not be able to make it to your classroom by themselves, or there may be a parapro in that room that you can ask to walk them down right before speech, and that saves a lot of time, of transition time in your therapy, if kids can get to and from therapy on their own. Sometimes that's just completely unrealistic, but you can figure out which ones can and which ones cannot. And always thank your teachers for their cooperations, because their cooperation, sometimes it's just as frustrating for them to have all the different schedules for kids who receive different special services in their class as it is for all of us doing the scheduling. Okay, so for caseload management, here are some things that you will need to keep. Debbie, do you want to? You're so great about the caseload management, and I've got the other. The next slide is the chart. Do you want to mention this and talk a little bit about this?
Sure. Okay, so on this slide we kind of have the categories that you're going to need to keep documentation on. The data collection refers to your students' progress on their goals. And I know we all went to graduate school and we all learned how to keep data collection, but it's not always the same as what you did in the clinic or in your internship. But you definitely have to keep data collection on student progress. You need to keep attendance, and some school districts have a method or like a attendance sheet you fill out. Other school districts have you keep the list in your lesson plans. So it doesn't matter how, you just need to show somebody was here, somebody was absent. And I can't even stress how important that is because sometimes a student will go home and parents will say, well, did you go to speech this week? And the kid says, no, I didn't go. Well, yes, you did. You were here twice. I have your attendance. These are the data that I collected on his responses, on his goals. So again, it's not only just it's for your purposes, not only just for student progress, but also to protect yourself from things that can happen when people question you. There should be some sort of lesson plan. Some schools, the principal wants to look at everyone's lesson plans, even speech pathologists. Other schools, they leave specialized programs out. OT, PT, and speech don't have to turn theirs in. But you should have some kind of documentation of what your lesson plans were for each session each day. And like I said, sometimes it's your own formats, sometimes it's something the school gives you. We are going to include a data collection lesson plan file for you in this session, and it'll be under is it resources, Amy? That it would be in this when they go into.
Yes, it's under resources. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So you will be able to pull up a bunch of examples of lesson plans and data collection sheets. So keep that in mind.
And I'll show some on that next slide, because I've got a bunch open on my computer, so I can bring some of those up to show everybody too in just a few minutes.
Okay, and we're going to recommend, and we'll go over this in a minute, that you keep them in a caseload management notebook. So we'll talk to you a little bit about that and how to set up a manageable data collection system from the start. Now, I played around with my data collection system every year. So it's okay if you start something, you don't like it, it's not working, you adjust it. So not saying you can't adjust mid-year, but you've got to have some kind of system to start with, and then you tweak it to fit your needs. Um, and we mentioned attendance. You're going to need to get some baseline data on each goal and objective this fall. So maybe this month, think of the month of August or the month of September, depending on when your school district, your school system starts. But that first month of school, collect baseline data on each of their objectives. And that comes into play later when we look at progress, and we might have to determine if they need some extra services, and we call them extended school year services, after the school year is over.
Mm-hmm.
And then your county, like as Amy mentioned, might have specific forms for each of those items. Okay, we can go on to the
Right.
next one.
Right. And just one thing on the baseline data, you do want to get it as soon as possible because you want to be able to show as much progress as possible. So if you wait 3 or 4 weeks, they're not going to show as much progress in that from that point to the next progress as they would 4 weeks earlier from that baseline data to the progress report. So the earlier you take the baseline data, the better chance you have of showing a great amount of improvement with your students and progress. Um, so,
Okay.
yes.
Okay, so this refers to that caseload management notebook, and it's just huge. And probably one of the biggest reasons why many of us come into the field and we are kind of anal retentive about our um, documenting things is that we have so many kids that we deal with, and we've really got to remember to, keep that information all organized. So in my district, we had a large district outside of Metro Atlanta. We always required every SLP to have a caseload management notebook. And we even outfitted them with it, with tabs and all these things. Not that your school district will do that, but it's really a great way to start. And I actually, when I was filling in other districts recently, I carried that notebook with me from classroom to classroom. I did a lot of inclusion, and I found that notebook was great. It helped me I had my data collection section. I had a calendar in there, and the calendar is huge, listing all the annual reviews that are coming up, any kind of new like IEP meetings or eligibility meetings. I had a way to, for attendance, like I said, one school district required an attendance sheet, another school district required that you just kept attendance on your lesson plan. So on my lesson plan form, I had all my students listed for my group, and I would check off if they were present or minus if they were absent. If there was some reason for the absence that was unusual, I'd even jot that down. Just student in the hospital, student's very sick, whatever. Um, then I'd have that at a glance calendar. You can make one up. Sometimes with the electronic IEP programs now, you can actually print out your caseload, and you can actually sort and ask it to print all your annual review dates. So there are some ways to print out things where you won't have to manually do it. And again, you'll learn that as you go through the training, the software training. So any shortcuts you can find are great, but again, you need some kind of calendar for the whole year. And this is also important because many times we are a related service. A student might, for example, have autism as their major eligibility category, and then for secondary, they get speech, OT, and PT. So that special education teacher who's the caseload manager for the student with autism, and you're new to the school, may or may not be communicating with you real well. So if you have this calendar in front of you and it says, okay, here are the 3 IEP meetings coming up in September, then you go to those case managers, and you can even look them up on the IEP program. So you're going to be able to find a lot of things really quickly. So you email them quickly. I see these kids are coming up for annual review meetings in September. Do you have dates yet? Can we check in, talk, those kinds of things. So if you're proactive, you can prevent sometimes people forgetting to let you know. And all of us, especially speech, OT, and PT, hate it when someone says, oh my gosh, I forgot to invite you, the IEP's tomorrow. and then you have no time to get ready. So all of those things are important. Progress report dates are usually set on the school district's report card grade sending out. They'll decide when the report card comes out for all the academic subjects, and then they'll determine progress report dates, and then we have to follow those. So if a parent gets a progress report for a student on all their academic subjects, they need to also get a progress report on their special education services. So that's kind of where that comes into play. Parent conference dates there are some times when the whole school, kids leave early a number of days during a week, and they have parent conference week. And sometimes that's a great time to touch base with parents, or even piggyback and after the parent conference have an IEP meeting or a meeting to adjust something on the IEP. So you want to know those dates too. You always include the school calendar in this at a glance for the whole year, because you want to know when you're in school and not in school. So that just gives you an idea of things to look for. Usually as a new teacher, I always got a school handbook, and it had a lot of those things in it. I also got a new employee folder sometimes when I signed on, and I would have those dates in there too. So there are usually places you can get all of that information. Sometimes in the front office they'll have a folder for anyone who's new coming into the school, and it'll have all those dates, and also schedules and things like that. Okay, so in your notebook you want to have a section for your lesson plans, data collection forms. We talked about baseline data, copies of progress reports. Sometimes I put them in there because I needed to follow up on some things. Sometimes I just put them in my working file. It just depends on where you are with, those particular students. I didn't need to put it for all my students because I was pretty up on their progress, but every once in a while something unusual would happen, and I'd want to keep a copy of that. Medicaid documentation. I usually had either a Medicaid folder, or I had a section in my notebook about Medicaid when I had to document for that. Because when you're doing that, you're going to be looking at your data collection system and the dates and your lesson plans, and then you go into the Medicaid documentation system to enter that. Anything else? I did have a referral section because it made it easier for me to keep track of who I had to assess at that time and what the timeline was. Again, you may just have a list I used to have a list of students and a date when evaluation was due, or certain other pieces were due, and then I would have a separate folder, for a working folder for each of those students. Again, it kind of depends on how you want to set things up. I did keep a referral log. My school district required me to keep a log which tracked the timeline from referral to evaluation to IEP development, etc. And then, like we said, depending on your school district, anything else that might be needed. Anything else you can think of there, Amy, about that case
No, I
management
think
notebook?
that's great, and especially for those of you that are new, this could look incredibly overwhelming, and so my advice is just to get a caseload notebook and just start putting one thing at a time in it. Let's start with your lesson plans, or let's start with the calendars. Let me just work on the calendar section, and just work on one thing every couple of days. Don't feel like, oh my gosh, tomorrow I've got to go put all this together. And so, don't let it be overwhelming. Just take one step at a time. But it is important to have one.
That's a great point, Amy, and it will fill itself up. It's kind of like
Yes,
as the job goes on, you will start filling those things in. So yeah, don't feel pressured. Just know it's going to be your friend eventually, because it's going to keep all the important stuff you need to remember all in one place. So
right, right. Thanks. Um, So we've mentioned the baseline data, go through each goal and objective on the IEP and get a starting point of their present level of performance on each of the goals and objectives. Collect data on the present level of performance. Uh, Again, I mentioned this, but do it now. Don't wait a few weeks, because you'll want to show progress for the kiddos that you're serving. So I want to all of these resources. Let's see. I'm going to click out of this view real quick, and bring up some. I'm just going to flash some of these up here so you can see what we're talking about. But all of these resources, all of these data sheets that I'm getting ready to show you are on the advanced system that you can log into tonight and access the JUMP. You'll have the PowerPoint. The PowerPoint actually won't be loaded up until tomorrow or the next day, but you will have all the resources are loaded up there already. So to just choose from, you've got articulation. Here's an articulation data form. You may even already have your own favorites, and that's okay. And sometimes I would work with one for a couple of years and then I'd quit, or I might use one data form for one semester and then change over to another and just try different ones. You're never stuck. Here's another one to consider. Another different data collection. These are just different ones that Debbie has collected over the years. And you can choose to do each group. Like, for instance, there's four targets on here. You could choose to do one group and do 4 kids. On this one, the 4 kids that might be in your group, and you do kid 1, 2, 3, and 4 and write it on here. Or you could choose to do 4 separate pages for each child. Personally, I find it easier to do all the kids on the same sheet at the same time, so you're not flipping back and forth. You've just got one little notebook that you're making marks in as you see kids, but that's just a personal preference. Here's a speech. Here, this is your attendance speech treatment record. This could easily be your attendance for what they're doing, what you're doing, and whether they were in or not. The other thing I wanted to mention about taking attendance, your children may go home and say, well, I didn't have speech this week, and once they come back to you, well, the reason was because there was a pep rally during his time, and then there was a field trip on the next day. So there were legitimate reasons he didn't get services for speech. We always want to try to make up those sessions and put them in another group later that day, or make up for those, compensate for those services. But we want to, again, it protects you guys if somebody comes back and questions whether you went to see that child or not. It gives, you've got documented reasons for that. This is one of my favorites, and I think that this works really well. This is something that you can print on Avery labels, the ones that have 3 rows of 10, and you print this off. So after each therapy session, it's got the student name, and then you can put whatever goal number 1 or 2 or whatever you're working on, and put the percentage on here, and then you peel it off and go stick it on their individual sheets at the end of the day. So everybody's got their own individual page, but you can still work off of the same page during the therapy session. I just think that's brilliant. Okay, so all of those are just some examples. There are many, many, many more out there. I found a gal on Pinterest. I'm kind of a Pinterest junkie, if you will, but I found a gal on Pinterest who all she posts are data collection forms and report ideas, and she has 4,600 followers on Pinterest, and so if you want to go look and see what she's got, see if something strikes you in the way that you think or the way that you like to organize. One thing I would say is don't spend a ton of time looking. That becomes a time waster. Just pick one. Spend a few minutes and a little bit of time looking at them and considering, but then pick one and go, so that you don't waste a lot of time just looking at data forms. For those of us who are also font junkies, you know exactly what I'm talking about. How we like to look at different fonts, and then it takes us 3 hours just to pick a font. Okay, so caseload management. Follow the expectations at your school regarding lesson plans. Deborah already mentioned that. Plan activities and themes for your lesson plans. but always be flexible. You never know what's going to happen during a day, or and then get creative with the same set of materials for each day. I love going and getting the themes that each grade is working with. So kindergarten, I want to know what they're working on in September, August, or August, September, October, November, all the way through the year. And I try to follow the themes that they're doing. Same with my first graders and second graders. Then I want to pick materials that I could use with all of my kids in the same day, but I have different levels of activities with the same materials. So you may choose to do a game for some of your low functioning kids, or maybe some of your younger kids, but then you might be able to do a higher functioning game with, writing or something with the same set of materials. That way you're not putting up and pulling out materials all day long. You've got the materials. You're just adapting your activities based on the same set of materials. And then also determine, and this you will in your lesson plans, which goals and objectives to work on that day and that week. One of the quotes is, "If you aim at nothing, you will surely hit it." So if you're planning for stuff, you're more likely to succeed. For lesson plans, again, follow whatever your school follows. If they want all the lesson plans for the next week turned in on Friday, then you need to follow that as well. Most of the districts that I worked in and worked for did not require SLPs to turn in lesson plans, or therapists in general. I don't expect that many will. Time management, plan at least several weeks in advance for lesson plans. We talked about that. Use classroom themes and curriculum objectives. We just want to complement what's going on inside the classroom. That way kids aren't learning about farm animals in the classroom, and then they come to us and we're working with different occupations with doctors and nurses and things like that. That's just is better to complement what's going on in their academic areas. What goes into a therapy lesson plan? These are the 4 things that you need: which goals and objectives you're targeting, student activities, the materials that you need, and then the length of time needed for each activity. Because you might think something's going to last all session when really you only need 10 or 15 minutes, so you might need a second activity to go with that. We've really covered this already, so I'm going to skip through this. But best practices for attendance taking: you need to note when your kids are absent and note their reason for absent, and then keep the attendance logs in your caseload management notebook. All right. Yeah, hey, we've gotten to the end here. So I'm excited. We have on our Facebook page, if you have not gone to the Cobb Pediatric Facebook page. Actually, before I start doing this, does anybody have any questions about caseload management? Because we're going to start getting into kind of announcements and what to expect in the next week or two, and I don't want to miss anybody. You can either raise your hand or type a question. Nope. All right. Well, feel free to type those in or raise your hand even as we kind of finish up and do announcements here. So if you go and like our page, we are doing a $100 giveaway that'll be drawn on Monday, Monday the 25th. It's next Monday, for all of our CPTS therapists. Joni Maroney is one of our managers in Atlanta. She runs our Facebook page. She has posted a post that says, "What do you love most about Cobb Pediatric?" And we are going to take the winner. We'll do a drawing from all the folks that comment on that. So go comment, go like the page. June Whitehead, the owner of the company, comments frequently on our Facebook page. It's just a quick and easy way to build community. You can go on there and type something, asking a question about therapy and getting some feedback. We post regular blog site ideas and website ideas, so it's a good resource to put into your news feed. Lastly, we still, just in case you don't know, Cobb Pediatric does offer a referral bonus. If you refer a friend and they then begin to work for us, you will receive a referral bonus for that. On our website, on our Cobb Pediatric website, there is a form to fill out to refer folks to us. So feel free. We would love for you to do that, and that's a great little extra bit of money if you know folks who are still looking for a job or want to change jobs. Want to mention on the Spring Ahead timesheets that you have learned about in your new therapist orientation. If you have not had your NTO, you will have your NTO, and you will learn about Spring Ahead. It is very, very important that your time cards, which is Spring Ahead, are submitted by noon on Mondays. They are due by noon on Mondays. We have lots of districts that we work with, and we have lots of invoices that we need to send to districts. We cannot send those invoices until all of the time cards have been submitted. So if you are delayed and procrastinating on your time card, you're going to be holding up an invoice for the company for the entire district. So that it is very, I can't express how important it is for you to get those in. And it makes Vicki, who does our payroll, it makes her so, so happy. So if you will get those in, if not, you'll hear from your clinical manager, and make sure you just check your Spring Ahead cards as well, that sometimes people may copy what they did the month before because their schedules are always the same and just put it into the next month. It's really not the best way to do things, because you may have had a doctor's appointment, or you might have had half a holiday for some reason. And then Debbie's going to end up, not Debbie, I'm sorry, Vicki will end up calling and saying, well, gosh, that district had half of a holiday on Friday. And then the manager has to call and say, did you really work? Because it was really half a holiday. And then you have to go back in and resubmit. So that's just a reminder for everybody. I think most everybody has their licensure. I don't think we're waiting on licensure for most people. But if you are, for some reason, waiting on licensure, please make sure you keep following up with the appropriate board with outstanding paperwork or where they are in that, because that'll be important for you to start work. So here's some jump into action for CFs and first-year therapists. We mentioned this at the beginning. Find out 3 names and contact information for your primary sources of support within your district, whether it's one of your Cobb support systems, or you need to know who the team special ed leader is in your schools, in your school building, and you need to know who your lead therapist is, and again, get those numbers and emails into a central location so that it'll be easy access for you. That maybe put that somewhere in your caseload notebook. I again love Pinterest. I'm a Pinterest junkie, but there are tons of speech therapy Pinterest boards out there, and I mean to tell you, if you're just hurting for a new idea for a game or an activity, they're all over. So you could make a speech therapy Pinterest board, and you've got a million ideas really at your right hand. So our next session is in 2 weeks. It'll be another Tuesday night, September 9th. It's on time management and behavior management. It's kind of another fun, again, no earth-shattering ideas, but sometimes it's good to hear, just common sense spelled out, and we go, oh, yeah, we just needed to be reminded of that. So I encourage all of you to attend that. Debbie will be presenting on the 30th of September on ethics and policies and in school-based therapy, and then we also have executive function in the 3rd and 4th weeks of October. These are filling all those out. If you guys don't have that, I'll tell you what, I'll be sending an email to everybody that was online this evening as soon as we hop off. And so I will attach the JUMP agenda as well, just to make sure everybody has that, so you can put that on your calendar. Our last 2 are closing out the school year, what to look for, what to remember, what to be aware of. And then our very last one is really for only CFs. We will look through your ASHA paperwork and just remind you what needs to be done and how to check in with your CF supervisor and make sure that all that paperwork goes in on a timely manner. And that's a very brief meeting in May. Are there any questions? We're not going to, don't hang up quite yet, because I do want to show you real quickly how to log into this advance if you have not done so to take the test and access the resources. Again, I'm going to show it to you. You don't need to take notes because I'm going to send you an email in just a few minutes that has the instructions listed. So you can simply follow the instructions that I'm going to send you. But I wanted you to see the websites and kind of get a feel visually for what you will be doing. So you registered on GoToWebinar and you participated tonight through our classroom, basically. So now what you have to do is go to our store. This is basically a Cobb Pediatric store to purchase webinars. They are going to be free for you. We're not technically purchasing them, but this allows us to let people sign themselves up so we don't have to sign everybody up for them. So if you're a new register, if you've not signed in to e-commerce, you're going to go to register.cobbpediatric.com and it will bring you this page. You're going to hit new register here. And it will bring you to this website. Or this page, I'm sorry, this page. You'll fill in all this information. The good news is all of this information automatically transfers to the next website where we're going, which is our library. So we've got our classroom, our store, and our library. We are working furiously to streamline this process, but for right now, this is what we have. So after you sign in and sign up, you can click Jump for 2014 and 2015. These are things, these are the courses that you can purchase. So you're going to purchase Jump 1. If you plan to go ahead, excuse me, I've got a little something caught in my throat. You can purchase 1 and 2, honestly, tonight if you plan to also purchase 2. You can go and add that to your cart as well. So then you're going to go to checkout at the top and the green line, just like you were going to purchase them. They're all free, and then you're going to hit submit order. This here is a link. So once it says thank you for your order, to complete your course, you can click here. When you click here, this will take you automatically to our advanced page. This is our library and our system. This will be where all of our courses are recorded. You can have access to resources. So you want to have an account here so that you can have access to all the different resources that we're making available through Jump. So I'm going to sign in under my administrator account real quickly to show you what it looks like. Again, I'm probably going very fast, and you're going to say she's going too fast. But I want to get y'all out of here. I know it's already 10 till 8. I want you to just visually see it so that when you walk through the printed instructions that we're giving you, it will be easy for you to remember what we've talked about. So this would be your own profile. This would be everything that would be your courses. It's not going to have as many tabs at the top because it'll be student. You're going to pick courses at the top. You may have to click my courses to have them all show up, but what should be showing up are only the courses that you have purchased so far from e-commerce, from that store site. So you will likely only see Jump 1 and Jump 2. We're going to pick that we want to start Jump 1. So here is the course that we took tonight. And we've got 9 folks that have already done that and registered on Advance. Way to go. And then you're going to come over here. The only sidebars that you will have as a student will simply be lessons and resources. So you will not have to choose from all these things. You're going to click on your lessons, and then you're going to click on participate in the webinar. This is what you will see. Participate in the webinar. It's a lot of click-throughs. We understand that, and again, we are working very hard to streamline a lot of this process. But once you do it once or twice, you're going to it'll be very easy. So it says participate in the live webinar. On yours, when you sign in, there'll be a little block right here that you check. So you check it and it says mark complete. Mine has already been marked complete, which is why it says that. And then the last thing that you're going to have to do is come down here and take this test. It's a 10-question test. I promise you it's very, very easy. You have to get 8 out of 10 answers right, and you have 3 attempts. So it should be very easy. This is how we will, you will be put on our ASHA report via this completion of test. You will also be able to print a certificate after you complete this test. So those 2 things, you have to complete the test if you want the certificate and for us to report it to ASHA. The last thing I want to show you is on the tabs on the left, there are also resources. And this is where you will find all of the documents that we've talked about tonight. There are data collection documents, and you just click on them and open them. You can save them on your computer if you want to. Again, pick the ones that you want. The other things that we included on here were graphic organizers. So if you want to look at that, that's great information for language activities and just ways to work on word maps with kids and lots of different variety of them. So I highly suggest that everybody goes on and registers here so that you can get those resources and take that test. Again, I'll be sending you an email. Oh, okay. I've got a few questions. Let me see. Will we need to print the certificate for CEUs, or will that automatically be sent to ASHA through your website? I recommend that you print your CEUs simply for your own, records. But yes, we send the report to ASHA, and they will have a record of your attendance tonight if you take that test and complete it. That's the one caveat. Let me see. We've got a couple more. Do you suggest lesson plans for high school and middle school? Debbie, I'll let you answer this because this is your background, your sweet spot, but my answer would be yes.
Specific lesson plans, I'm not sure that we have those up there yet. Under the graphic organizers, we have a bunch of things that could be used for middle school and high school. And then we've had some sessions in the past, but I don't know which ones are recorded. Amy, you might have to help me there. That
Right.
did relate to some of the lessons that you would use, like books and resources for middle school and high school, but they're not labeled as such. So I don't know what's available for past libraries, Amy.
I'll have to look. In terms of high school and middle school, we've got the language.
Language and Literacy and Trash to Treasure had
Both
some.
of those. So
Yeah.
Tanya, when you sign in, I'll send you an email when we get done because I think that those 2 will help you. Okay, and then so you're at 2 schools and had to go to several district meetings and missed 2 groups. How would you compensate for that? I would combine those 2 groups with another group for one day out of the week. So you maybe pull them in with one, and it might be a large group. You pull them in with 2 kids, and you might have 4 to 6 kids, but it's just for that day. Or you may fill them into one of your planning periods, or grab them before school really starts if they're there. And
I guess it's important to note that if you go to an all-day workshop sponsored for SLPs, and you probably can't make them all up, and that's okay. But if you can make up some of them, it's kind of being strategic. If you can go in there and make up some of them, or you look at the day and you say, oh, there are some kids that either critically need it, or we have difficult parents who are going to call us on it because they missed therapy, then maybe you make up this be strategic and pick the ones that you have to do. But I think there is an understanding that if you're sick also, you can't make up everything. You can't recreate a whole day. But as Amy said, if it's a short meeting and you miss 1 or 2 groups, then it's great if you can find a way to make them up.
And Tanya, also, I would encourage you to connect with Debbie because she did work in middle school and high school for a long time and has great insight and information and ideas. And the same for anybody else that may be on tonight that is serving middle school and high school. And Debbie's email is dlozo, Lozo, so dlozo at cobbpediatric.com. And just email back and forth with her, and she'll be happy to walk
Sure.
through some
Be glad to
answers and
help.
brainstorm. Um, okay, so I think we're done tonight. It's 8:15. I promise we will not go this long. We really only want them to be an hour, but we had some housekeeping, and I wanted to really show you guys how to log into Advance and make sure that's not a little bit too crazy. If you have problems, feel free to call me and or Lydia to help navigate, or if you're having trouble logging on or it won't let you do something, we will help you navigate getting on so that you can get access to these things. Lydia is available after 5 o'clock Monday through Thursday, and then on all day on Fridays as well. And then you can shoot me an email or call me, and I'll be able to walk you through that at any time as well. And that will be in the email also that you're going to get in just a few minutes. We have really enjoyed tonight. I hope it was helpful for y'all. Again, I know it wasn't rocket science, but hopefully it gives you ideas and points you in the right direction to get you moving for this beginning at the start of the school year. I know it can be a little bit crazy. This is my last encouragement. And I say this every year, you know, the first year that you ever do anything, any job, it takes you about double the time to do anything. You're learning as you go. Be kind to yourself. Don't beat yourself up if something's taken you a little bit longer than your colleagues, or if you think it should. You're learning as you go. Just know that next year it's going to get so much easier. You'll know what to expect. You'll know what's around the corner. You'll know what to change from some of the things that you did this year. And then by the third year you do it, you can do these things with your hand tied behind your back. So just be encouraged this year. Don't be too hard on yourself if things take a little bit longer, because it's expected when you start something new. So I hope y'all have a great week, and we will talk to you in a couple of weeks. Thanks so much. Good night.
Good night. Have a good evening.
Amy, good night.